Welcome back in, everyone. Boys, the prayers have been answered for almost every Avalanche fan now. Colorado has completely, within the span of a week, shaken up their goaltending situation. Last week, we touched on the Anoon and Wedgwood trade, and just over the weekend, they traded Georgiev, Kovalenko, a second, and a fifth-round pick for Mackenzie Blackwood, Giovanni Smith, and I believe a seventh or a fifth round pick as well from San Jose. I mean, a lot of fans were calling for a trade like this to happen regardless, but just the timing kind of seems odd given that it's coming off probably Georgiev's best performance of the season against the Red Wings there in a 2-1 win. I know all of us are going to have some comments on just the whole situation and how like this was a much needed change, but Justin, you've kind of been the most vocal in terms of a Mackenzie Blackwood goalie coming in for Colorado, so I'll let you take it away here just with what your thoughts are on the Avs overhauling their crease.
Obviously it was necessary. We've talked about that since, almost last year. It got brought up quite a bit, especially during the regular season. They did pretty well. They got kind of a more veteran-y guy in Blackwood, who's a known kind of backup stable goaltender first, and then went out and got Blackwood, which, he was probably the most affordable available starting goaltender or starting caliber goaltender that you didn't really have to give up, a ton for, and who would fit into your cap. So I think they did pretty good. Like, I see a lot of people online upset about maybe getting rid of Kovalenko, maybe a second too. None of that really matters to me because their top six is kind of set. The emergence of like Ivan, Prishipachov, whatever his name is, I can't say it, has kind of made him a little expendable. And like you don't really need these guys if you can use them to package them to kind of fix the biggest glaring hole in your roster. That said, I know looking at Blackwood's numbers, a lot of times, it, like career-wise, not as good as Georgiev's, but you got to take in consideration the teams that he's played on probably haven't been as good or up to par as the ones that Georgiev has been on, especially the last couple of years. And, in 19 games this year, he's got a 9-10 save percentage on one of the worst teams standings-wise in the league. So if the Avs had 9-10 save percentage going into this trade, then wouldn't be necessary, and they would probably be, I don't want to say leading the division, but like they would be looking a lot better off than they are
now. That's 100%. And like you said, going over some of Blackwood's numbers, like his save percentage, high danger save percentage is a lot better than Georgiev's. Mid range is where it gets a little tricky for that, but a lot of that's also dependent on the team in front of him. You look at like there's a 5-goal difference in terms of like goals for support in front of them, and we've even said it at times this season watching the Avs. They looked kind of timid playing in front of Georgiev at times. Like they almost knew they had to score 5 or 6 goals a game to win. So maybe bringing in a guy like Blackwood just helps settle them down a little. They can be a little more run and gun, kind of their true nature of style play, just to be more free and allow them to just, again, play to their strengths and not have to worry about overcompensating for a weaker goaltender in the crease there. But you brought up Kovalenko too, who's part of this trade, and Trav, I'll let you get on the goalie train here too, but I want to, because you send out the McFarland quote from about the whole trade, and Justin brought it up with some younger guys that have kind of stepped up and made Kovalenko a little expendable. Is this maybe just one where we're starting to see the Avs maybe hitting on some of these like kind of diamond in the rough players for depth roles that we haven't seen in the past, so they're able to make a move like this?
Um, it's hard to say. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm not even really sure how to answer that. Like, yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, um, like, yeah, I think, like, I do like the way that CMAC kind of worded that in the way that, like, look, we got some guys in the system, and I was reading, he kind of said like we had to bite the bullet a little bit, more or less. To be able to get Blackwood and kind of sweeten the deal and throw in Kovalenko. And CMAC said it's not, um, it's not exactly what we wanted to do, but sometimes you got to pay the price to, kind of get what you want in the deals. So, Kovalenko, it was an interesting one to see where he was kind of going to go with this season, but and I think we all kind of agreed that he was probably not looking much more than a third liner in the league, barring a absolute breakout season. Um, so I think Colorado's got room to spare with that.
That's I think maybe that's where the I kind of maybe phrased that wrong to throw you off there, but like, and you go back and look at McFarland's quotes, which were kind of about a lot of the younger guys kind of coming, like being ready to come into the league soon. And maybe that's where a lot of it comes in because just gonna try to pull it up here. So yeah, like anyone watching on YouTube now can see the quote, but like quick ascension of it is basically like, I mean, this quote doesn't make much sense for the Kovalenko. It's more about the Blackwood contract coming up, but um like McFarland goes on, basically says that it's gonna be he's just focused on this team getting on the right track and getting on winning right now. And it's one where when you look at Kovalenko, Justin brought up Ivan. You brought up however you say the Russian's name. I'm not even gonna attempt to do that. I'll butcher that completely.
We'll go 0 for 3 on that because I don't know how to say it either.
Yeah, and like he even brought up Taylor McCarr in that, and Callum Ritchie he brought up in that. I think that's more just those are guys that the Avs feel more NHL ready in terms of later this season or early like into next season. And a guy like Kovalenko who hadn't maybe done enough to establish himself as a middle six guy with the Avs that they felt he was expendable. But again, you go to this quote and it's one where you're kind of looking at like McFarland obviously is going to look at extending Blackwood, but he's basically putting no pressure on. He's basically taking all the pressure off himself in saying that he just wants everything to be focused on the ice right now, focused on this team getting back to winning and just being consistent. And I think all of us, all three, are in agreement that with Blackwood in net now, we feel more comfortable in terms of the goalies that the Avs are going to put out every night, that they are going to get back on track here. And this is, I mentioned this to Trav before we recorded. I've been up since 4 in the morning. I'm going on about 4 hours of sleep. So I'm going to be doing a lot of rambling here. You guys can butt in whenever I get on rambling and just interrupt me if you have a better, because you guys will probably be able to streamline a lot of this talk better. But Trav, I'll kind of throw it back to you here for just your thoughts on the whole Blackwood situation.
Um, You know what? I actually don't really have a lot of thoughts on it, surprisingly. I think really the only thing that crossed my mind, which you kind of brought up earlier, was Georgiev kind of winning one for us against Detroit the other night. And, unfortunately the damage had already been done. Like this move was due. But you'd hate to see he goes on a run here in San Jose. Maybe he finds his game again. Um, like I'm not disagreeing with the trade or anything. Like it was absolutely 100% the right move. But that was really kind of the only one thing about it that crossed my mind. Is like, like I wonder if Georgiev is kind of over with his early season struggles, and so he's going to get into form here, or whether um, whether he's kind of almost running himself out of the league here. So Blackwood coming to Colorado, I don't really have any thoughts on that, to be honest. Like,
I think
Wedgwood's been great. That's as pretty much
yeah.
as much as thoughts as I have on the whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, fuck, has Wedgwood given up a goal as an Avalanche yet this year? I mean, he shut out the Devils, and I don't think he gave one up against Buffalo.
Yeah, he lost the Canes,
Oh, right, yeah.
but that wasn't.
It's also Carolina.
They got shelled that game. Like
Yeah.
Carolina just kind of had their way. But like to go further on Trav's point there about Georgiev kind of finding his game there in Detroit. He's kind of had a couple of these games though this year where he would have a decent start and then all of a sudden like a game like Buffalo would happen. And I think regardless of what he did after that Buffalo game, you could kind of see it on guys' faces after he let in like a goal after goal. It was just like, come on. McKinnon a couple weeks ago was just like, doesn't really matter what we do, the puck's going in our net. Like as much as a like kind of intense vocal guy McKinnon is, I haven't really heard him say anything like that about his own goaltending before, I don't think. So there's been a lot of instances, and then there was one big one that got brought up on a podcast I was listening to today. They saw a clip of it too. Malinsky kind of made a bad play, kind of screened Georgiev. The other team scored, and Georgiev whacked him like on the feet. And apparently, that did not sit well with Bednar, CMAC, and I think maybe Landy too. All had a conversation with him about it. So I don't know if there's more things going on between like behind the scenes and things like that, but you don't often see that with a lot of goalies, and so it seemed like time was on the wall. Like if Georgiev finds his way, then good on him. But I'm happy that the Avs and us fans kind of have kind of a fresh start in that sense. And I mean, it sounds like both these guys, like Wedgwood and Blackwood, are really good, like kind of locker room guys and good on the ice, like behind the scenes. So hopefully that kind of helps because I feel this team kind of needs that too.
Especially with Landy out, there is a kind of hole in that locker room that needs filling because, like you said it, McKinnon's such a fiery personality, and he's probably such a big, loud voice in that locker room at times when he gets going that Landy seemed to always be the kind of guy to just almost help everyone else block McKinnon out or just kind of reel McKinnon in when needed. And maybe it's right now there's no one doing that as much. So, but it's also to the point where Georgiev came to Colorado as a backup. Like he was going to be a backup to Shesterkin if he didn't get out of New York. He barely played over 40 games in a season before coming to Colorado. It's maybe one where he had a really good first year. Last year, he got nominated to the All-Star team more because Colorado just played so good in front of him that they got him to like 40 wins or whatever it was on the season. But it's not like he helped them win a lot of games. He's not the type of goalie to really steal you a lot. He can steal you games, but he's not that goalie. And just again, the start he's had this year, the inconsistencies. Yeah, he could go on a run of and help San Jose win 10 straight here, but he could also be the reason San Jose completely bottoms out the rest of this season because he's just not able to consistently put together 3 or 4 good games back to back. And, like, just looking at it too, like, I'm kinda curious, like, so you go to, um, the Avs contracts now with, like, kind of what C-Mac was saying in regards to contracts. Blackwood's only making 2.35 million. Wedgwood's at 1.5. So I think those guys combined make around what Georgiev made contract wise. So you're probably saving a little bit of cap even now with this whole changeover in the crease. And you give yourself a nice little runway too to really just see what both these guys have because Wedgwood you have for next year, but you can really just see how Blackwood meshes with this roster and plays with these guys if before you actually offer him any like big contract.
What would you say that like right now before he plays a game with the Avs, like what kind of re-signing like AEV would he be sitting at?
Uh Kind of looking at his past numbers. I mean, outside of his like after his ELC with the Devils, where his 2 seasons on his ELC, he put up a 918 and a 915. He had like 3 bad years of like 900 or lower. His first year in San Jose wasn't great. Last year in San Jose, like he put up basically right around a 900 save percentage and a 3.45 goals against. Kind of hard to blame him for that because that Sharks team was just brutal.
I mean, that makes sense, getting lots of shots, but letting in
Yeah, but like
goals.
he's put up a 911 and he's put up like 3 goals against so far. Like I probably basically almost what Georgiev's contract just was with Colorado might be that ballpark. Like unless Blackwood comes in and really finds kind of the goalie that he was maybe projected to be when he came up with New Jersey. Like if he all of a sudden goes on and puts in a high like a 918 or a 920 save percentage for the rest of the year with the Avs, that's the only time where you're probably going to see him start asking 4 to 5 million per year. I mean, but like given his age too, like I mean, goalies are different. What kind of term are you guys would you guys be comfortable with the Avs going with Blackwood?
I mean, he'd be closer to 29 when signing that thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Really, like, I don't know if he'd really want to go over 4. Like, it'd be hard because it's kind of probably his last chance at actually getting money if he does a good job too, right? But yeah, I don't know. 4 years would be a lot. 5 would be, I don't know. It'd be 34 by the end of that.
Maybe some
But I
of
mean,
that.
a lot of goalies play decent into those years too. So it's
Yeah, and some of that might come down to the money he wants. Like you might maybe you keep it a lower AAV with lower term, or you go long term with them to cut down the AAV if you feel comfortable enough. But
yeah.
I think it depends too on like what Ilya Nabokov does in terms of his contract status in the KHL. Because if he's ready to come over and if he's looking the goalie he's supposed to be, maybe it's one where you sign like almost do that kind of heir apparent. You already have Wedgwood, so you bring Nabokov over for 1 season in the American League, running Blackwood, Wedgwood for next year, and then you have Blackwood, Nabokov for 2 or 3 seasons and just slowly let Nabokov take things over, but that's kind of a down the road issue, and, like, again, the quote I threw up out there on the screen, C-Mac kinda said it, he's not concerned about contracts, he's not gonna get into any specifics with it, he's just gonna let things play out, and again, I think he's probably just hoping this team just settles things down. There's been a lot of noise around a lot of like contending teams so far this NHL season, and we're gonna jump to another one here shortly. But like, it just feels like CMAC just wants things to calm down with this team and around this team. And now that he's overhauled the goaltending, he's hoping that it does just for a month or two, but and he can really see where else he needs to add to this roster for a playoff run.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think. Excuse me. Sorry. I think you'll see it stay pretty quiet in Colorado until the deadline now.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of just with all their injuries, you just need guys healthy and just get kind of your ideal lineup back and see what you really have before you make any drastic changes to this roster again. Nothing beats the rush of excitement like seeing your team win live. Getting there is easy with Gametime. Thanks to the new Gametime picks, you can easily filter out the fluff and focus on Gametime's super deal, along with their other great and amazing deals. With Seat View, you get to preview your seat before ever buying. Plus, Gametime has the lowest price guaranteed, event cancellation, and job loss protection, because life happens. As mentioned, Gametime Picks helps you curate the deals so that you find the best ticket price to any event, concert, comedy show, or theater event that you're going to. So take the guesswork out and relax about ticket purchases with Gametime. Download the Gametime app or go to gametime.co. That's gametime.co and create an account. Use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download or visit Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. A team we touched on last week about drastic changes. The New York Rangers finally pulled the plug on the Jacob Trouba situation. Uh, Basically, the rumors out there were they threatened him with the Barclay Goodrow situation of waivers if he didn't accept one of the few trades that they had. And I'm thinking the only reason that they were able to actually get a decent trade value for him is because there was apparently 4 or 5 teams that were interested in acquiring him anyway. So, what's your guys' just initial thoughts on the whole Trouba trade to Anaheim and everything that kind of all the rumors that came out of that?
You go first, Trav?
I can. um, I mean, yeah, I thought like everything they did kind of all adds up together. You know, you get rid of Trouba, you sign Shesterkin. Um, it all kind of makes sense, like the direction that they were going with it. Um, I think I don't know, like there needs to be some sort of like big change in leadership in New York. It seems like um, and not to like put all the blame on Trouba or anything, but like Zibanejad that hasn't been good. Kreider's been iffy. Um, so and then obviously Trouba had that $8 million contract. I mean that wasn't I think doing New York any favors at the end of the day. So um, I don't really have much more else on it. It's unfortunate that it sounds like it was a little bit ugly. Just the situation between Trouba and the upper management. And then I had seen a rumor about uh, the Leafs possibly trying to acquire Trouba like a little bit later towards the deadline, but then I seen um another thing today about Trouba apparently making it clear to all the Canadian franchises that he doesn't want to live in Canada, which I mean I can't say I blame him, but that's another story.
It was one Ottawa was big on trying to acquire him too, maybe. And I think just the way the whole situation played out is we might see this within the next few years, just as like maybe not immediately. It might be more common actually this whole season here as teams try to maneuver with a tighter cap situation, but just with the cap going up here the next few years and teams having more flexibility here in the coming years, we might not see it as much. But the fact that this is now like you've had Vegas for years operate like this, just making the ruthless decisions and basically what they thought was best for their team. And now you've had the Rangers do it twice where they're finding ways around no trade clauses just to get out of basically they know what they want. They just want that cap space and they're doing any way necessary to get that cap space because a lot of GMs now, that's the way the NHL has gone is that cap space is kind of gold right now. And when you have a hard cap like the NHL has, it's necessary to make these ruthless changes. But I do agree with you, Trav. That's maybe one too where that's why Kreider's name's out there with the Rangers, and is that they are looking to do a wholesale swap in terms of a leadership group in that locker room, but we'll see what comes of it. I don't know. I mean, we now have Jacob Trouba and Ratko Gudis on the Ducks, and the memes have gone out there. It's Fulton Reed and Dean Portman 2.0 playing in Anaheim. So
Yeah, I mean that whole thing with the Rangers, they're kind of becoming a mess since this whole story or leaks came out that Trouba and Kreider were on the trade block. Though, like I think everyone kind of knew that Trouba has been out there since the summertime, and I don't know how much that's affected what's gone on in that locker room, but I'm sure he hasn't been happy about it. And I mean, it's not his fault that he probably gets paid too much now for kind of what he brings on the ice. Like I don't know, probably a good $4 million defenseman right now. Like in his career, when he signed that, maybe it was steep, but at the time, it didn't really feel like it was like that much. Um, but like it hasn't aged well. But at the same time, like the Rangers aren't playing well. They're like you said, Zibanejad's been pretty bad. Um, like they're not really getting much contributions throughout that lineup, especially right now. They're 2-6 or 2-7 since this all came out, and from the sounds of it, they need to get a bit more size because that's kind of been their fallacy in the playoffs, especially like up front. Right? They kind of get pushed around, especially when it came to them against the Panthers. Well, there goes Trouba, so like you don't have that anymore. So,
and that's kind of Kreider up front
and
is
that's
a
Kreider up
bigger
front.
forward.
I don't know, like, are you looking at like a Heedle, a Kako? Like I'm not sure what they're planning on doing. Like Zibanejad, yeah, like, but then again, like you start trading those guys, like you're going to be all out of kind of depth for whatever you're getting. I don't know. It's crazy because at the start of the year, I thought this team was kind of not a lock to win their division, but they would be top two, at least top three. But the more you kind of watch this team play right now, like they're going to be struggling for a wild card spot, especially with the way other teams are playing, like Washington too. So I think their moves are far from done. They have like just over $8 million in cap space. So they got to find a way to fill that with an impact player, because if not, this season could start to get out of hand pretty quickly.
I think it's you brought up the contract of Trouba too, like it was maybe steep when he signed it. I think a lot of us forget what Trouba kind of was when he came into the league. He's always been a bit of a hard nose, like if you have your head down, he's going to catch you with a big hit. But he's always been known more as a defenseman with a heavy shot, moves the puck well, half decent skater, and then all of a sudden, like Adam Fox came in and kind of pushed Trouba down to like second fiddle in terms of an offensive right shot defenseman on that blue line. And you've had the emergence then of guys like Miller and Schneider who have just a little younger, a little more quick, like their feet are still up to the speed. Trouba's kind of lost a step as he's aged here. And it's just one where the Rangers then he fell into a situation where it's never really been his true game as a shutdown defenseman that the Rangers were hoping for him to play, even though he does have that physical edge. His defensive game isn't the greatest. And I know Anaheim has all those young, good puck moving defensemen on their blue line but it's also one too where this just allows the Ducks to bring in a veteran to just alleviate the pressure on those guys where it's you can put Trouba in high pressure situations and that's more like he's going to be more comfortable with that. He's not going to because they have a guy like Ratko Gudas to throw out there to defend a lead, and Trouba's going to be out there just kind of teaching these young guys how to tie a game, like how to press for a goal and all that. So, and like just the Rangers contract situations again, I think I made the mistake last week of saying Miller had one more year, but he's an RFA at the end of this year. Lindgren's a UFA. If they're going to sign Vakanainen, who they got in this Trouba trade, he's an RFA. They like their whole top four defensemen right now. They only have Fox and Schneider's only got one more year after this under contract. And they currently don't have a backup goalie signed, and they just committed $11.5 million to Shesterkin and net. So I think this is just the beginning of a lot of changes in New York. It's just a matter of how swiftly and how smoothly they come. Like, is it going to be this season? Is it going to be the off season? And how loud and messy are they going to be? Because one thing, like the three of us don't really pay that close attention to is a lot of the ownership groups of teams. But it's been out there a lot, like James Dolan in New York owning the Rangers and that. Like, he's a very active owner in a lot of his teams, more so towards the Knicks. But like, if he's all of a sudden putting pressure on Drury to get this get the Rangers over the hump of conference finals and second round exits and all that, like getting them to the cup final again, I feel like he's a tough owner to please, and that Drury kind of maybe had no choice in terms of how he handled this. It was real, like from the tippy top of the pressure that this came from, and Drury just did the best he could.
I'm thinking that if this lasts pretty quickly, then we could see another coaching opening here. Not saying that it's on Laviolette, but
and maybe that's the next bullet Drury uses is the coaching bullet.
It's like the most open one now, and we discussed this in an episode way earlier this year, but like how expendable coaches are now.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to get into coaches, Luke Richardson was just fired by the Blackhawks, and
that's right. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, that's his fault there too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one where you have Connor Bedard and then just a bunch of randoms going out there every night. Like, the fact Bedard's been able to do what he's done this year so far with how the rest of that Hawks roster has played is pretty incredible. Because he has like no one to play with.
Yeah. Did you see the end to the Jets game? The other or the Hawks Jets game? Bedard comes in, they're pushing for the tying goal late, makes a couple sick moves. He dishes it over to Bertuzzi at like the top of the circle on the half wall, and Bertuzzi fucking rims the puck around. It goes all the way out of the zone, and the fucking Jets go and bury the game in the empty net.
Yeah,
Yeah, I saw that.
that was
Just
actually awful.
just a beer league play.
I'll give it's not all on Bertuzzi. Like, the Hawks defenseman or winger, whoever is on the sideboards, needs to do a better job securing that puck.
Yeah.
Like, but also too, Bertuzzi, like, he had space to do a quick curl back and actually like make a play. Like, it's not like there wasn't a Winnipeg player within a stick reach of him.
No.
Like, he wasn't pressured at all.
No, that was kind of the part that I was a little bit baffled by. There just a few different choices you maybe could have made there.
Yeah, like, especially with Bedard doing all the work to gain the zone like he did.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of we've switched off the Rangers here, but like, what do you guys think come July 1st? Like, does Bedard go full kind of McDavid style and say, like, I'm looking, like, you guys have to pay me, and then if you want me to stick around, or is he going to do more like maybe an Austin Matthews style where it's like, I'll give you guys 4 years. You're still going to pay me well, but you get 4 years of me here before to see if I really want to stick this out long term.
I think it's smart for any guys like him and his skill set to do the like 4 to 5 years. That's just my opinion. Especially with a team that you have no fucking clue what they're going to become in those years.
Yeah, it all dwindles down to what your priorities are. Like, if your priority is to get the bag, then yeah, he could probably sign a fucking whopping deal in Chicago. But if he would like to be, part of a winning culture, and have a chance at a cup, then yeah, he's got to think. I think shorter term and kind of, you know, get an eye for where this Blackhawks team is going here in the coming years, because it's and we knew it would be, but it's a long way off right now.
I just look at their prospect pool too, and like, they don't even have anyone coming up that screams like immediate help for Bedard either.
No.
Like, some of their bigger, younger, like, forward prospects, guys like Oliver Moore, Merrick Van Acker, Jake Pridham, those guys they're going to be really good NHL players to like someday, and they might all be like top 6 NHL players, but they're also going to take 2 to 4 years in the league before they really find their footing as a true top 6. They're not a Bedard level where they can come in and have an immediate impact. And even on defense, like, they have Korchinski there. He's dipped his toe in a bit. He's not really been a regular much. And he's kind of getting more regular minutes this year, and they drafted that Levshinov kid who, jury's still out. A lot of scouts had him with all those like that 6, 7 top defensemen in last year's draft. Some scouts had him as the worst out of them, so we'll see what comes of him, but it's just one that the Hawks don't really have a true blue chip prospect coming up in the system. They have a lot of prospects and draft capital, but it's maybe one where Kyle Davidson needs to go and say, okay, I'm going to overpay for a 22, 23-year old that's on maybe has 2 or 3 years of contract just to give some help, like immediate help for Bedard here. Cause again, like if they don't do something, Bedard's gonna get frustrated sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's kind of what they need to do. They need to get rid of some of these other guys that just, like the Taylor Halls, just they're not really doing anything for them and need to like bring in a bit more dynamic players, like one or two dynamic players if they can. Like, get someone that can keep up with this guy's skill level. They don't have that. They don't have anybody near that. Like, and I mean, there's not a lot of guys that are near Bedard's skill level, but there are guys that are skilled enough that can keep up with him. They don't have anybody that can remotely even do that.
They need to essentially almost need to find they need to find a Zach Hyman. They need to find an Arturi Lehkonen, someone that can play with skilled players, even though he's not quite that level.
Someone on Twitter is like, who would be great for him? Brandon Hagel.
Yeah. That's honestly probably would be a really good mix.
But
back to Chicago for Hagel.
I mean, they brought back Teravainen this offseason thinking that was going to be it, but
I'm not sure Tampa's willing to do that.
I know. I don't think so.
Ranting into Chicago.
Ranting for Bedard.
For Bedard?
No, no. But Chicago could pay him whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll leave that for another time.
Yeah. Like we're a bigger podcast. That's how you start just absolute shit show in a fan base. The 2024-25 NHL season still has the new car smell, and the action is just heating up at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started at DraftKings Sportsbook. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win or a goal score. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $100 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
Get to the World Juniors. Their camp roster came out a lot, like week and a half ago or something like that. Some stuff has changed. More information has come out since this came out. Obviously, some of the big omissions were guys like Tiji Ginla, Zane Parekh, Beckett Seneca, and Carter Yakmachuk, like all three top 10 draft picks from the most recent draft that didn't even get an invite to the camp. It's recently been noted that Iginla is going to have hip surgery and is done for the year. Well, a few others like Parekh and Seneca have gotten the invite since that original roster came out, kind of due to some injury issues with other players here. But what's kind of your guys' first thought process on on just the camp roster?
I was just gonna add to those 4 names that you listed there, Brock. I had heard a rumor, and now I don't know how true it is, that Yakam Chuck didn't want to go, and that's why he was left off the camp roster. So it seems like we kind of got 4 for 4 questions answered there, with Seneca and Perrick getting invites, and again being done for the year. It looks like. Um, as far as the rest of the roster goes, I think really the only question mark now that's not there is Michael Misha. But I mean, there's also a lot of good names on this roster. A lot of um, a lot of cases to be made for guys that did get the invite. So there's some names I don't know either. Again, I'm not a wizard with junior hockey. There's a lot of kids I don't know, but I know there is some pretty notable ones on this invite camp this year. Um, I guess that's that's about all I
Yeah.
have. But
Like, yeah, and for anyone like listening, obviously if you're watching on YouTube, I pulled up Corey Proman's tweet of what the original camp invite roster was. Yeah, you brought it up though, Trav. Like Misa not being there, even though he's leading the OHL in goals at the time. Like I've said it before, Hockey Canada gets very political with this shit, and they just make boneheaded decisions at times in terms of like who they invite. And they just tend to overthink a lot of this too, instead of just inviting the best players.
just want to jump in off of that. I kind of said this once, but um, Don Sherry used to voice his frustration in the whole, political aspect of Hockey Canada, and Misha's just another example in a long list this year. And I recall Don Cherry back in the day. You know, Hockey Canada didn't send Connor Brown the invite when he led the OHL in scoring. Back, I believe, when McDavid was a rookie.
Yeah, I think I remember that. It was right around that
Yeah,
time.
I remember that.
But it's just,
That
Misha
one
not
gets
getting.
tricky though because Brown, I think, might have been an overager anyway and wasn't eligible for the tournament. It's like that might have almost like Don Cherry had the point, but it might have been a senior moment for him where Brown might not have just been eligible, and that's why he was left off. But yeah, like
Maybe.
Misha should be there. Like again, we said it in our group chat. Like, give them the camp invite at worst.
He's just another in a long list. It seems year after year, they're kind of missing the mark on somebody at at,
Well,
at the very least, an invite, like you say there, Brock.
well, let's put it this way too. Like one, I know this the image is very kind of blurry, not very easy to read, but here's a name too, Michael Haig. He's leading the NCAA in terms of freshman points, I believe, and he didn't get an invite to this camp. Like, and I know like Hockey Canada has a bit of a history of not going the NCAA route, but like, it's just another one where here's a guy that is putting up offense against older players, and you're not even gonna give him a look. So
So, well, I'm usually kind of in the camp with a lot of these, like, emissions that you guys are talking about, like the Mishas and whatnot, right? This year, I didn't really have a lot of negativity around the guys that didn't come, other than Beckett Seneca. And
yeah,
the reasons why I just thought Seneca should have been there. One, because of probably their first or second line center is so used to playing with him or having him around. He's a big body, and he can score goals fairly easily at the OHL level. So I thought, that's kind of like a nice trio for me, especially on a short tournament. You want guys that can score. The other ones didn't bother me as much because most of them are young, are a bit younger, and they can play next year. If you look at a lot of these ages, it's a lot of 05s.
And
It's like an older tourney. There's a lot of talent on this camp roster alone. You can only bring so much. I like kind of what Canada did with the Four Nations. I kind of like what they did with bringing guys that kind of can almost already fill those roles, and they have two young studs kind of take over with this. Three young studs actually, with Schaefer, Martone, and McKenna. So there's so much talent on this roster that there was always going to be some questionable guys that are left off. And I'm not super upset about it. I think the one that the internet has been most upset about was Zane Parekh. I don't know how much you guys have got to watch him. I've seen him probably 4 or 5 times in the last 2 years. It's not a lot, but it's a lot for somebody that doesn't, go to constantly scout hockey players. He's good. He's flashy. He stood out the first time I saw him because of that. But in the playoffs, not even just in the playoffs, but he's very allergic to the contact and kind of playing hard along the boards in his own end, which I find somewhat troublesome when you already have probably 2 guys on defensemen in Molendyk and Schaefer that can probably lead you offensively if you need to. Brock can maybe correct me on that with those guys, but both of them to me seem like they could probably handle that kind of workload and maybe play a little bit better defensively. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on all this. Would I like to see Misa and even Hage or whatever on this roster over some of these guys I'm not as familiar with? Probably, but at the end of the day, I feel like probably those first 3 lines are probably going to be already set by the time they even get to camp.
Yeah, and to your point of the defense, Molendyk's gonna be I think you're probably pairing him with a guy like Oliver Bonk as your top pair. Molendyk's gonna be your power play 1 quarterback. You're probably looking at a guy like Sam Dickinson being your power play 2. If Bo Akey makes it, he's gonna be another guy that's a little more of a power play specialist type. Schaefer has more of that two-way play in him. He's such a good skater, but he has the size to just play physical and play defensively. It's just going to be his youth that holds him back really in this. And when you said about just their makeup, I just look at this this camp invite, and they could make a bottom 6 that's just so nasty to play against. When you look at guys like Cole Boyden, Riley Height, Martone, Tanner Howe, Wood, and probably throw Callum Ritchie. I can see Ritchie being more of that 3C shutdown center type. And there's just so many guys like Jet Luchenko in there, even just guys that are just going to be a pain in the ass to play against. And one where obviously here's the guy that's out of the camp that is the reason Seneca's going with Easton Cowan. I've been on this boat since he got drafted by the Leafs, and Leaf fans fucking overhype their prospects to no end. Cowan, I said this last year at the World Juniors, Cowan's best bet at a World Junior event like this is as a 3rd-line energy bug type player. And Canada's going to use him as an offensive top 6, which Seneca's probably actually your better bet for it. Like you said, Justin, Seneca's just able to score at will in the OHL right now, especially with the run he's been on recently. And Cowan's game just lends more to that kind of third line energy guy and that can chip in offense when you want him to, but he's not really a true offensive driver. It just looks that way in the OHL because he's that much better than the OHL competition, but this is the best of the best of this of the U20 age group. He doesn't get away with all that stuff at this level. He doesn't have the same flashy skill as a guy like Andrew Crystal, as a guy like McKenna, as a Jaeger, or as a Caton. That really you don't need him in your top six. He's best suited as a bottom six guy, and I'm curious to see like what his injury is gonna how it's gonna unfold and if he's even gonna make the team or not. Because he got absolutely rocked in that game against the Generals and is currently out with an injury. But here's a name I want to throw out at you guys. I wanted to bring this up at some point. And again, this is kind of Hockey Canada, like their camp. I know this is camp invite, doesn't mean a whole lot. What would have your guys kind of thoughts or impressions been if Hockey Canada invited Landon DuPont to this World Junior Camp?
I totally forgot about him.
Because he's over a point a game as a 15-year-old defenseman in the WHL.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been fine with him going to camp. I haven't seen him play. I haven't seen him play. I know he's good, but yeah, I haven't seen him play yet.
No, and I've just seen highlights and all that, but like, it just goes to one where Hockey Canada just refuses to set themselves up for future years by just not inviting these kids to get them exposed to a camp like this.
Yeah, he should probably be at least at the camp.
That's a good point. I like that point.
Because, like, again, like the issue with this is Hockey Canada probably knows what 10 of the forward spots, probably six of the defensemen, and they probably know their three goalies going into this. It's just a matter of if someone completely shits the bed during camp, if there's an injury, or if someone just completely blows them out of the water as a surprise that they make alterations. And I bet you for the most part, Hockey Canada is looking for, they're really only watching for about 4 or 5 roster spots to fill. So, like, why wouldn't, I do think it's one where why not bring more 06, 07, 08s? In DuPont's case, bring in 09 just to camp to get him exposed to the environment of it and just be around these guys.
Yeah,
Like,
because
guys
he's going to be on the roster down the line.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets an invite to camp next year and possibly even plays way onto the team if Hockey Canada gets their head out of their ass.
Yeah.
Like, I go back to the 2018 team, like, again, like, all their legal issues aside, but Cale Makar was probably their best defenseman on that team, and they refused to play him because they, A, weren't familiar with him because of NCAA, and B, just thought he was on the smaller side. He was too offensively minded and didn't trust him in anything else. But when they played him like 25 minutes a night, and he dominated the ice every time he was out there.
Yeah, once he got on, they knew they couldn't take him out.
Like, it's just one where Hockey can't, again, you're going to see Molendyk, you're going to see Bonk in terms of defensemen probably even get overused at times because those two were there last year and Hockey Canada just has that familiarity with them.
Yeah, definitely. And I still think this all comes down to how good their goaltending is going to be, who their goaltending is going to be, and will it be good enough?
I'm not overly concerned with their goaltending.
It always concerns me until I see it.
That's fair.
But
like, Ratzlaff was the third string last year. I felt he should have been more backup just to get him more games. I think this year, again, politics are going to play a factor, but I do think Carter George should have the leg up in terms of being the starter, just because his style of play is so calm in the net that he's not a guy that you really worry about. If he gives up a bit of a squeaker goal, he's not a goalie that you worry about it destroying him. He's gonna basically do everything in his power to not allow another goal. Plus, he acts as a third defenseman back there with his puck handling ability, which is big in a tournament like this because a lot of teams won't have a scouting report on him for him moving the puck like that. So,
Yeah, he's definitely the one I'm most familiar with, and yeah, he's good.
I just think
I don't know anything about Bjarnason.
I believe out of the 3 that are drafted, did he not go? Yeah, he's the highest drafted one. Like he went 51st overall to the Flyers in the 2023 draft. 6 spots out of where George was taken, but like he's one I think kind of gets overshadowed a bit in terms of he's not really a goalie that's going to steal you a game. Like he doesn't have the ceiling that George or Ratzlaff or Ivan Kovac have. He's more just that safety net of just you kind of know what you're going to get every game from. But I feel again that's part of George. Just George has that game stealing ability.
Yeah.
You guys have anything more to add on the World Junior camp roster here? Or?
No, I don't.
So I believe we're recording this on the 10th. I think it's the end of this week. They're playing the U Sport All Stars, and then there's a good chance by next week's recording, we'll have a really good idea of what the actual tournament roster for Canada will look like. So we'll kind of touch on that, go over that next week, and just give our opinions on if we think they're going to be good enough to medal or not at this year's World Juniors. Speaking of George here, before we go back, I know you guys aren't as familiar with junior hockey, but Justin, you shared it in our group chat. The Owen Sound Attack signing Trenton Bennett, the 6'7" goaltender. Do you think that's one where we kind of said too, like Carter George could get a haul for the Attack if they wanted to do a quick rebuild here? Given that we're all kind of from the Owen Sound area, do you think that's one that happens? Like over the course of the World Juniors, George gets traded?
I think I'd like to see it just so that the Attack can kind of get like a lot of pieces or good pieces back to kind of get their rebuild going, because last year and this year have been, pretty bad for them. Like they're not even in a playoff spot right now. So, and the only reason they're probably doing as good is because of George, and that other goalie for them has been doing pretty well too. But this is kind of the way junior hockey works, though. If you have a guy like this and your team's not doing that well, trade them and load up with some picks or young players, and then in 2 years you'd probably be back in it again.
The issue is George has one more year of junior eligibility, so it's kind of that double-edged sword. You try to load up, move things around and get the get a roster to compete next year with George, or do you hunt it for 2-3 years down the road?
I don't know. I think they'd be tough to get a good enough roster right now.
Yeah, they don't have much going for them.
But that's what I think, anyways. But
We are running long here, but let's final piece here. Let's get to something Trav shared from Instagram. So John Tortorella does not like diving, and he has a nice quote out there saying he doesn't teach his players to dive, and in a roundabout way basically comes back and says maybe he should start. What's your guys' just thoughts on the quote from Torts and just how it came across?
I mean, I like it in like a certain way. Like I know where he's coming from. Like obviously he doesn't want to do that, but it's out of frustration. In the way like that he kind of broke it down and said, he teaches his players not to dive. He kind of goes on to say like we got to play an honest game. There's no cheating. There's no, um, you know, uh, cheating the refs. Sorry, lost my train of thought. No cheating the refs. I don't know. I'm kind of right on board with that. I always have been. Like, you never really heard much about diving growing up, mostly because it didn't fucking happen. It was never part of the game that I grew up loving, and I certainly don't want to see it become part of the game. And it just goes hand in hand with what Tort said about playing an honest game, and that's what I've always stood by, that playing an honest game, not trying to fucking, I guess persuade refs into doing your team a favor. And you can look at it whatever way you want. Maybe you see that as a good thing. You want to do anything to gain your team an advantage, but I just think there's some, and I don't know the right word, but there's some sort of just for having respect for the game, I guess. I just don't know. There's a word, I feel like, and I can't think of that word, but you know what I'm getting at, anyhow.
I think it is just just respect for the game is what it comes down to, and unfortunately, it's just gotten to the point where teams, players, and coaches are trying every little tactic they can to gain an advantage, and it includes diving. And until the NHL and the refs really clamp down on that, then it's one that's going to continue. I think the unfortunate thing is though, I saw the clip that he was Torch is kind of referring to, where the guy went down pretty easy from a bit of a tap on the skates. It just sucks because letter of the law in terms of officiating, it is a trip. The stick hits the skates, the guy falls down. By the black and white rule book, that's a penalty. It just sucks that the refs call that once out of every 20 times it actually happens. And that the fact that then players just go down a lot easier because they think that the refs are going to call it more when they see it happen and not call the dive is just, again, it's just a lack of respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
But any final thoughts there, boys? Or
I got nothing.
No, speaking of diving, Bunning just gave a good one there. A big sell job.
Oh, fuck, really?
Yeah. And then whining and yelling at the Avs bench. Classic.
And that's another one where it comes to is like Torts obviously just has that. Torts has the respect of the league to get away with a quote like that. You look at some coaches around the league that say something like that, their team wouldn't get a call for probably a good 10, 20 games unless it was a blatantly obvious penalty.
He went about it the right way. He's been around for a long time. Like, he has a lot of respect for the game, and I would say a lot of the guys that have played for him have a lot of respect for him. So he knows exactly what he's doing when he says stuff like this. And like, I'm not saying that it's all calculated. That's just all Torts.
Yeah, like he seems to wear thin everywhere he goes. Like he doesn't have a long shelf life out of one particular franchise, but yeah, like there's not a lot of times where he leaves the city and there's a lot of bad stuff said about him from the locker room. So he comes across as brash and kind of arrogant and in your face, but yeah, he's probably one of the most consistent coaches in the league for getting the best out of every player he's coached.
He's been around for a long time. 20 years ago, won the cup.
Yep. So we'll wrap there. Touch kind of revisit some of our early season predictions next week, touch on the World Junior roster that's maybe a little more finalized, and maybe start touching on some of the overall league standings and where teams are sitting, because we're starting to get to the point where we can start to maybe tell which teams are going to be true sellers and which teams are just having a shit year. Nashville.
Cool.
So
Nashville is a dumpster fire.
oh yeah. We'll touch on all that next week. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. Give us a download on your favorite podcast listener. And again, DraftKings and Gametime. Use code THPN for great offers on each of those. So catch you all next week.